From Studio 3C in Rockefeller Center, this is News 4 New York.
Well, the Journal of the American Medical Association released a new study today on the alarming rate of military suicides. Numbers show more active duty soldiers kill themselves than die in combat. Brett Morash, Director of Veteran Services for the Underserved, is here to talk more about the problem and what needs to be done to help struggling soldiers. So, Brett, it's always good to have you on. Thanks for joining us again. So this really is kind of incredible and disturbing, and I think one of the most interesting things out of the study is when you hear about these rates, at least I personally at first assumed it must have to do with being in combat and what you see in combat, but interestingly it really doesn't correlate. Soldiers who have served in combat, who have seen combat, don't seem to have the highest rates necessarily. It's typically men and those with mental health problems and other risk factors. You served in the Navy for 20 years. Tell me about just the general stresses of being in the service.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that came out of this particular study, was that it's not really just about being in a combat zone. It's that the military has become increasingly complex, much more demanding on one's time, stressors in their life, and on the families, because for every person that's deployed overseas, the job still has to get done worldwide with the forces that are left at home that don't get caught up in this particular study.
Yeah, there was an uptick in suicide rates in 2005, and people equated that with the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, and again thought of combat. But then looking at the numbers, they looked at folks from all the different branches of service from 2001 to 2008, and again want to show you the risk factors. It was men who are 25 and under, with some college, married, many of whom have not been deployed, and again with mental health issues in some ways. What support is there when you're in the service and when you leave? Is there enough?
Well, certainly while you're in the service, the services have been paying attention to the increase in suicide. So there has been a complete programmatic look from the military services side, trying to dispel the stigma of PTSD and other mental health issues, trying to get soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines to come forward and talk about their problems and hopefully prevent suicide. Outside of the military, once people are veterans, the Veterans Administration has been looking at the numbers. Last year, over 8,000 veterans committed suicide. They have a veteran crisis hotline, which is 1-800-273-TALK, and there's people there right now ready to talk to you if you're considering committing suicide.
Yeah, what do you see as some of the warning signs if you have a loved one who is in the service? What do you look for?
What we look for, and what my folks screen for when we talk to veterans, is we're looking for mental health issues, PTSD, or other sorts of diagnosed mental issues, or even if you think you have one that you haven't been diagnosed, financial problems, unemployment, marriage problems, and kind of all those sort of stresses that many of us, and just being civilians, deal with.
Yeah, I know another risk factor that was noted in the study is alcoholism as well.
That's true. That's true.
So that's a big factor to watch out for. And interesting, it was members of the Army and the Marines who had the highest suicide rates according to this specific study, which seemed to be one of the longest in this area, but hopefully it will shed light and more services will then be available.
Absolutely, and I think that will hopefully allow people to focus on those most at risk in the future.
All right, well, Brett Morash, again, thanks for being on the show.